Isonzo is the newest entry in the World War I game series by Dutch studio M2H. It's set in the Alpine front where the endless war between wood and shark and rock rages on. The Italian front is well represented in this game. The uniforms are detailed, the maps are recreations of real-life battlefields, the various weapons look great and so do explosions and the various effects. Gameplay-wise, Isonzo aims for a middle ground. There's an intentional clunkiness to everything that slows down both fighting and moving. If you're not sprinting, you're an easy target, but if you are and an enemy catches you, you die. As such, the only real way to win ground is sneaky flanking, raw numbers, or coordinating with fire support. Thankfully, the maps are compact and the objectives clear. There is barely any downtime from spawning to fighting, or dying. The class system has also been streamlined. Verdun represented the various historical units using squad types, each having 4 different roles with different weapons, perks, uniforms, and so on. In Isonzo there's 6 classes, most of them limited, which represent the various units, with more sold as cosmetic DLCs, which means it's easier to play the class you want, with the caveat that some weapons and utilities are hard limited. It's a more normal class system that works pretty well, the only real problem being that progression-wise, the only exciting unlock is the Assaulters LMGs. Each class can equip various weapons, but also secondaries and perks. To me, it often feels like the perks bring parts of the gameplay to what they should be by default. The biggest offender in my opinion is melee. In Verdun, melee was floaty and weightless but functional. In Isonzo, melee is floaty, weightless and also a death sentence because landing a hit will make you stuck in place for a couple of seconds. The only way to make it useful again is with dedicated melee weapons that take up a utility slot. What's worse is that melee is particular. The stab itself doesn't deal any damage, your weapon has to specifically lock onto the enemy to do anything. Very clunky. The rest of this game's clunkiness comes from the unskippable animations that you commit to every single time you press a button. This is what happens when you give 2 orders in a row with your whistle, for example.
Avanti Savoia!
It's annoying, but it's something you can get used to. Something else you'll have to learn is the maps. They're pretty unique for a shooter and there's some interactivity for the various classes, giving most of them some micro objectives to help the team. Except the marksman, he just shoots. Officers need to get closer to the enemy in order to place artillery flares in appropriate positions. Mountaineers also have flares which spot enemies and make aiming mortars faster. They can also spot with binoculars to give your team temporary wallhacks. Riflemen get ammo boxes to keep mortars, HMGs and cannons firing indefinitely. Engineers are most useful in defense, where they can build team weapons and barbed wire, but when attacking there's also forward machine gun positions to suppress the defenders. Too bad these are mostly useless, as your soldiers literally sticks his neck out as much as possible while using it. One other trick an assaulting engineer can do is building sandbags to vault over the indestructible barbed wire that in some maps goes from one end to the other. Any class can sabotage enemy equipment, but the assaulter has a perk to do it faster. If you can destroy an enemy NG, it's gone for the whole match, meaning that both attackers and defenders have reasons to launch raids in each other's territory. Especially important are the forward spawns. I just wish the game showed you where the enemy can build one, as knowing their position is pivotal for map control. The objectives are also better than the endless struggle for the middle trench in Verdun. There's either areas to capture or explosives to plant and defuse. All in all, I think it's pretty well designed. They did a great job balancing class roles and interactivity. But bugs. A few crashes, but also a lot of spawning while already stuck in places, or easily getting stuck yourself, and sometimes interacting with objectives and buildable just doesn't work. Might not be a bug, but your soldier calling for support every time your commander does is incredibly annoying.
Dovete bombardare quella... Muoversi! Artiglieria in arrivo! Preparatevi ragazzi! Aereo in arrivo! Dovete bombardare quella posizione!
And also turning the gore up means having constant screaming all around you, which you might or might not enjoy. More than once, the game spawned me outside of the map where the needless boundary marking barbed wire stopped me from getting back in. One time it spawned me off a cliff,
Torna subito a combattere! Muoversi!
sometimes the game will inexplicably spawn you behind enemy lines. I don't actually know if it's a game-breaking bug or a mercy mechanic to help struggling teams. Finally, sometimes the match just ends. Speaking of, let's end this video. To recap, Isonzo is a definite improvement over Verdun. It's a little annoying that the classes start out so basic, but leveling is pretty fast. Arguably, only two classes play differently. Everyone else is just a man with a rifle and slightly different utilities for the team, which might hurt replayability for some. When it comes to weapons, I can see people having different preferences for pistols, but for rifles, rate of fire is the only stat that matters. In my opinion, if these kinds of realistic shooters are appealing to you, Isonzo is definitely worth picking up, maybe on its next sale to give devs time to smooth out some bugs, and nerf grenade spam. And if you aren't, it's not too far gone into autism territory. I think Isonzo does a great job skirting the lines. It's just clunky in an endearing way that forces you to meet the game on its own terms. Thanks for watching, have some clicks.
Sparando su queste coordinate! Su quella posizione, ragazzi! Attaccate! Carica! Muoversi! Lo avete visto? Sta ricaricando, ragazzi!
Mangia la merda, suona la tromba.